hasn't spent a lot of time in camp with Makovich. And then Vincenza said, Nona, Vincenza is watching you.
That's my grandmother.
There you go, Bobby. There you go. The support.
There you go.
Of course, I told you guys.
That's awesome.
Nice. Shoot, whenever I told my mom I'm podcasting, she's like, "Are they paying you for that yet?" No, mom. No, mom, they're not yet.
That's awesome.
But we're going to move on to the third fight on the main card, which is the first title fight that we have, and it's between Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling for the title. What is the thing right there for the bantamweight title? We got Petr Yan, who is minus 110, and then Aljamain Sterling, who is also minus 110. So it's an even split. How do you feel about this, Lou?
Wow, even split. I didn't see the odds for this fight. I mean, that looks about right. They're both coming off. They're both winning. I think Petr Yan is on a 10 fight win streak, and Sterling is on a 5 fight win streak. The thing I like about Petr Yan, he's just a pure striker. I like pure strikers. I've never really trained in MMA. I'm just a big fight fan. So to me, as coming in as a super fan of boxing, I like the strikers. This kid has power. This kid will knock your head off. But at the same time, he's rounded because he will take you to the ground. And he will make you tap out too. He looked great. He looked great against Uriah Faber. And that was when Uriah Faber was streaking. Like, everybody was like, yo, you're old. But, he was looking good. Made mincemeat out of him. Jose Aldo, he left him in a bloody mess. So this kid is the absolute real deal. He's really looking to knock you out. On the other side, Aljamain Sterling, he's looking to wear you out as well. He's more of a wrestler. He's got that ground and pound aspect to him. And I actually, in his last fight against Corey Sandhagen, I picked against him. I thought Sandhagen was going to come in and use his length and just keep him at bay. But like we were just discussing earlier, when a guy is proficient at something, he's going to get it done. And he ended up getting the choke on him. So this fight is a little bit similar to me as the previous fight we were talking about. We have a striker, somebody who's looking to knock you out, against somebody who's looking to just wear you out. And the odds are, they're sort of pushy right now. The money is going on either guy. So that's really surprising. I would have thought that Petr Yan would have been the higher favorite. But again, Sterling is coming off 5 wins in a row, so you can't really pick against him right now either. I'm interested. I mean, this is the fight I'm really interested in on the whole card, because I want to see if Petr Yan, if he's really, I would love to say that he's the real deal, and I would love for him to pan out as the real deal. But Aldo and Faber, the last 2 notable wins he has, they were kind of on the back end of their careers anyway. While Sterling has been streaking against, younger guys and just people that are up and coming. So it'll be interesting to see if Yan can really solidify himself as the best bantamweight on the planet right now against a more than game Aljamain Sterling. I'm up in the air on this one, really, though, because I just chose the wrestler in the previous fight. And on this one, I'm leaning more towards the striker. So this is the one that I'm really most interested in seeing. I got to be honest with you. But this one is, this is the fight of the night for me anyway.
What about you, Miles?
So this one, man, this one's harder than the other ones, I would say, for a lot of reasons. So my whole bit in this is, look, my observations come from mostly my background in martial arts and MMA, as well as, combatives and stuff. Like, that's where I've spent most of my life, about 24 years at this point. So my observations that I'm about to give you are based on my experience and of having trained, of having done like competitive fighting and stuff. And they might not seem like intuitive, but it's just the way I see it, just based on everything I've learned. So here's the thing. So Petr Yan, given his background, yeah, he does love to stand and trade, and he's really good at it. He's got tons of power in his hands. He can even do, pretty decent leg kicks when he decides to. Like, he was doing a little bit of that with Jose Aldo, but then he kind of stopped. I don't know why. He should have kept going, but the guy's already kind of proven himself in the more minor leagues, like Absolute Championship, and he was a Grand Prix winner in that. So he's also got the drive, and he knows what it's like to work to become a champion. You know what I mean? He's also got the other assets of a good boxer, good head movement, good evasion. And he uses that to compensate. Even when he sometimes overthrows his shots and he misses, he's not, in a bad spot necessarily. He'll roll his way out. He'll slip out. He'll move. He'll cut the angle. There's a lot of things he can do to where even when he throws a bad punch, and it, like bad punch in terms of it misses its mark and he would normally be vulnerable, he still slips his way out into a good position. Now I would say he's only slightly the better, like technically proficient striker, mostly because Aljamain Sterling doesn't really strike all that much in terms of like his training background. I think he's a grappler who's picked up striking as he goes along. You know what I mean? So I think that Jan, what he has to do here is he has to be patient like he always does, pick his shots, really kind of keep mind of his takedown defense, especially against Aljamain Sterling. I don't know if he's had to worry about that as much in the past because of who he's fought. Like, I thought that would maybe be something that was tested with Jose Aldo, but I guess Jose Aldo was good to stand and trade with him instead of try to take him to the ground. And then when the exchanges did go to the ground, like Petr Yan just kind of dominated him. Like, it was very one-sided. And that just goes to show you, even though he's not very credentialed as a grappler, he's still got a good coach back there showing him some good skills, because he knows how to lead with his hips. He knows how to get those good positions. He knows how to dominate someone if they're trying to fight from their back. And the concern would be, is Aljamain Sterling using his wrestling to use a very dominant top-heavy game, or is he going to try to fight from his back as you would typically learn more often in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? That's where most styles start you at. They teach you to fight from your back and front guard, a half guard, things like that. So it depends on how he's going to utilize his grappling, because if he tries to fight from his back, I think he's going to be at a disadvantage because Petr Yan, we already saw what he does to a very sophisticated grappler who just comes in with the wrong grappling strategy, right? Like, you can't count out his hands even on the ground. But what Aljamain Sterling has, to kind of counter that, he's very fast. He's very light on his feet. He's quick to move. His punches are quick and his kicks have power. But again, I don't think he spends as much time striking in terms of his background. So he's learning as he goes. He's getting better. I don't think he can match Petr Yan yet in terms of proficiency or in terms of power. But he's a fast starter, and I think that's going to play a big part here. It's going to come down to, does Aljamain Sterling come out, start fast, get the work done that he needs to do to get ahead in the cards or get closer to a submission to wear him out, in that first round? How tired is Jan after that first round? Is he more susceptible to takedowns in the second round and third round and so on, right? Or is he not doing the work he needs to do? Is Petr Yan dominating him even on the ground with his punching and, just creating these ground and pound situations that are in fact kind of flipping the tables on Aljamain Sterling and wearing away at his gas tank? Because again, a gas tank issue could be happening here with a 5-round fight for Aljamain Sterling, who's more used to 3-round fights. So you got to add that factor in there. It's a new, length of fight that he's got to factor in. Every round that he's not used to is potentially a round he could gas out and get into a lot of trouble, on top of having to absorb a bunch of heavy punches. And those heavy punches, they take something out of you. You know what I mean? So I think overall, obviously, I see Jan as being the guy who's, going to walk away with a knockout victory if that's the way this fight's going to go. But Sterling has more than enough background, and I think he demonstrated that with the Sandhagen fight, to win this by submission. He's got an excellent pedigree when it comes to the ground, as long as he approaches this with the correct grappling strategy. Just because you have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt doesn't mean you'll tap the guy every time. You still have to have the strategy component, and you still have to execute it to perfection, right? Right. If it goes to a decision, I see this going either way, because the both fighters have roughly the same number of decision victories. If Sterling can't force Jan into a grappling situation in an intelligent way and get ahead in like ground control time and successful takedown attempts to, rack up the points early in the card, before Jan starts to build his steam, before he starts to kind of figure out what Aljamain Sterling's strategy is, his tendencies, he finds his range, things that a boxer would be accustomed to figuring out over the course of the fight and adjusting accordingly, because those usually go 18 rounds. Like, you need to be constantly learning about the guy you're fighting about if you want to, lead to a win a lot of the time. And that's a skill Jan has from the background he comes from. Now, if this kind of goes the other way and Jan is able to fend him off for the first 2 rounds and Aljamain's starting to gas out a little bit, Jan's going to continue to build steam. And I think the difference in the fighting styles, as well as when you look at the stats, would point to Jan racking up points in significant striking over the course of the fight to ultimately come to a decision victory. So really, this is going to boil down to how the first 2 rounds go ultimately.
First off, with this fight, I think Jan only had the 1 5-round fight with Aldo, and I think it went 3rd round. I think it ended in the 3rd round, I believe it was.
Right.
So he really doesn't have that 5-round fight gas tank either. He was able to luckily get that fight against Aldo, who was on a 2-fight losing streak, changing divisions. All because Sterling had just fought, and then he was basically, him and Moraes at the time, who were 1 and 2, were idle. And then Cejudo, of course, he relinquished the title when he retired. Jan basically jumped up from 4 to 1, and then I think Aldo started out 5. So they basically had the 4-5 matchup for the title, which is very, very odd for that to happen. Other than Aldo, just like you said, Jan has only fought, his other 2 big-time fights were Jimmy Rivera, which he won by decision, and then Uriah Faber, which is the fight that he won right before the title fight. Then you had Sterling, who his last 4 fights, he beat Cody Stamann by submission, Jimmy Rivera by decision, Pedro Munoz by decision, and then the Corey Sandhagen fight in the first round by rear naked choke. So I think that's why it's more of like an even, because even though Jan had that 195 strike dismantlement of Aldo, Sterling has had more harder fights. He's fought 4 guys in the top 10, 2 that were at the time were in the top 5, and then since has pushed out. And then Sandhagen, I think he's ranked number 2 now, behind Sterling. So this is going to be a matchup of styles where I'm going to see Jan, who you wouldn't know it, but he's another Habib guy. He trains with them. It's him, Makovech, Habib. He just doesn't use that sambo that much because of his high volume of striking. He likes to use that striking game more than he does the sambo. For him, he's going to want to get that going because the more strikes he lands, the more like he'll get ahead on the scorecard. The sneaky thing with Sterling, though, is his leg kicks. He does the wrestling. He's the one to get him down, but he's pretty tall for the division. Mm-hmm. And then he has those long legs. So he has added that to his game since he's been in the UFC. He usually leg kicks the guys and then sets them up for a takedown. What he has to watch, though, is Jan knows that, and then he usually follows up his opponent's leg kick with his own leg kick. He usually checks it out with his own to kind of wash it out. And I feel like if Sterling could get this fight to the ground or to the cage, I feel like he's at the advantage because he can limit the striking of Jan. That's his bread and butter. If he gets the striking going, this is going to be Jan all day. But if he can limit that, get him to the ground, and keep it down within like the total fight, the striking wise for Jan to like 60, 70, I feel like Sterling has a great chance with his size, his body, and then the legs. I either see this going Jan by a 2nd round knockout, or I see Sterling by decision. If I had to go like just bet wise, like I'm going with Sterling all day, just because I feel like with his background, with who he's fought, he has that pedigree of fighting top guys. Where Peter Yan, his number one was Aldo, and then Aldo was known for his leg kicks, and he doesn't even use them anymore. That's why you see Aldo losing all the time now. He used to have those leg kicks, and he kicked the guy like 15 times, and the guy would just like his legs would be done. And then ever since he got popped by McGregor, I feel like he's been too afraid to go with the leg kicks anymore. I don't know what it is. He's just gotten away from his dominant game plan that won him the championship at the time and made him a dominant pound for pound fighter. He's not the same anymore ever since that McGregor fight. But for me, I'm going to go with the Sterling by decision if I had to pick one route. But don't be surprised if Yan gets the striking going. He could knock out Sterling.
So I love what Miles said and how he related it to his own training, and in a way I can relate it to my own training. I feel like Sterling is a wrestler that's learning striking as he goes. So I feel like he's so, and even I saw this in the face-off, I feel like Sterling is so reliant on his wrestling and reliant on his ability to take down Yan that it's kind of going to mess with him a little bit if he can't. If you can't get Yan on his back, listen, Yan works with gold medalist wrestlers, works with, like D-Bake said, like works with Khabib, works with those guys here and there. So his takedown defense is going to be proficient enough to be able to stop Sterling's to a point. So if Sterling can't get him down, I feel like the odds go way in Jan's favor there. And then if Yan can push the pace and get his striking going, and then kind of what he did to Aldo, and then if Sterling loses some of that, like some of that pop, and then loses some of the speed on his takedowns, it's going to be a lot easier for Yan to prevent Sterling's takedowns. And then he could do what he did to Aldo, where he kind of gets on top of him, he pressures him. He's going to have Sterling tired, kind of like he did Aldo, I believe, and he's going to start ground and pounding him for long periods of time. And I don't think it'll go in in Sterling's favor, to be completely honest, just because like I can relate it to myself. Like Sterling is a wrestler who's learning striking. My thing, all my training's been in kickboxing and boxing, and I recently started learning wrestling and jiu-jitsu. So I feel like if you put someone in a situation that they're uncomfortable with, not necessarily that I'm uncomfortable or Sterling's uncomfortable with their striking, but if you get them in a position where they're not as proficient, I feel like that creates a lot of problems, and I think Jan's going to exploit those problems, and I think he gets the win. I think it'll be a late, like TKO, like 4th or 5th round.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to consider here is that just because Sterling can wrestle him up against the cage doesn't mean that's free. That exchange is going to cost him something.
Yeah,
Not only is it going to be energy, but he's going to get hit. And those hits are heavy and they add up. And so eventually I think what's going to happen is Sterling is like, shit, this isn't working out for me. I better go back to striking. That's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Exactly. You don't want to stand trigger, Jan.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You're kind of between a rock and a hard
place. I know Yan is the champ, but I just feel like you have to take into consideration the fact that the top guy that he's fought has been Aldo on his way on the decline. So I feel like the people that he's fought, he has won, of course, but I feel like I get that advantage to Sterling because he's fought 4 guys in the top 10. So to get to this point, so I feel like he's more ready to be able to win this compared to like another guy who would be put in this place like Aldo, who's on the way down. Sure. I think that's why they have it minus 110, because even though Jan's the champ, and of course his striking is just Aldo's word, he's one of the only guys I know that can get up to 200 strikes in a fight. Him, Covington, and Max Holloway. Those guys are high volume strikers. Sure. They do that just to get ahead on the scorecard. But just like you said, even though Sterling is learning striking, he has several aspects to his game that are beneficial to him in this fight. And he can use his past fights where he's fought guys with different game plans to his advantage, because he has fought a bunch of wrestlers and strikers where he has the more polished record than Yan. Mm-hmm. That's why this fight is so close, because they both have their pluses and of course their minuses. Like it's going to come down to if Yan could get the striking going and get way ahead on the scorecard, or if Sterling could get the wrestling going or just limit him. If Sterling could get up close it's either if he gets up close or if he can stay from distance. I kind of hope that he stays a distance away, used his legs, kind of like what Gon did with the. It's a lot different. I'm just going with his game plan, staying within distance and then going in and going back out, like Gon did with Rosenstruck. It's a lot different because those are heavyweights, but he has that long length at this division. Whereas Jan's kind of small. I feel like he's kind of small, but he's quick.
Sure.
He needs to use his long legs. I feel like a lot, like often he needs to get him going, go back and forth, keep moving. We don't know if he's going to gas out because he hasn't. He hasn't done a 5-round fight, but then Jan really hasn't either because he only went 3 rounds in the 5-round fight.
But the thing is, though, that if Sterling stays on the outside, that would favor Jan because Jan is looking to strike you. But what Sterling wants to do is grapple you and take you down. So he wants to be close and get that clinch and take you down. But I was also going to say that Reddy is relative when we look at the records because, Jan doesn't have the names or the star power on his resume. But at the same time, the old adage, from the NFL, you got to play who's on the schedule. Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter if they have 2 wins, 3 wins, and you're the 14-win New England Patriots. How often did we see that?
Yeah.
You play who's on the schedule. And if you dominate them like you're supposed to, that's a metric of how good you are. So Jan, while he doesn't have the star power on his resume, he's looked dominant. He decimated Uriah Faber, who again had a comeback fight, was looking great. He was the praise of the MMA world, and he completely dominated Jose Aldo. So it's not like they were close fights. He dismissed who he had to dismiss. And we can't really knock him for that. But at the same time, Sterling doesn't want to stay on the outside. I don't think he wants to stay on the outside. No, I think he's going to want to just come in and press and take that boy down and ground and pound him because one right hand from Petr Yan and it's lights out. You know what I mean? So
just remember his last fight, Sterling's last fight. He dominated Sandhagen, got him with the triangle choke. Sandhagen just need Edgar out of the fucking UFC for all we with how bad he was. Sandhagen's been on the rise right now. He's ranked number 2. Rivera and Munoz, the other 2 fights, they just had a fight of the night like honors with each other where they're shown where Munoz is going back up, and then just so happened Rivera got hit with the calf kick, of course, which has been a big thing the past couple months. Yeah. So like
2 things I want to piggyback on here. Number 1, you keep hearkening back to who Aljamain Sterling has beaten as if it builds him up. But here's the thing.
It's not that.
One of the very first, like you're saying, he's more prepared because of who he's fought, right?
No, it's just his style. Yeah, I think his style works.
Well, no, you keep talking about who he's already fought, though. Like you talk about like the last 3 or 4 matches he's already had.
Yeah, but then you talk about
Petr Yan, not so much.
But then you talk about him needing just the wrestling game, and then not being able to stand outside. I feel like he can stay on the outside because he has the length. Yan has small hands. Like arms.
Strategically,
he has to get up close to Sterling, the Landos, where Sterling could just stay on the outside, kick him with the leg kicks, come in, come back out. That's why he has the length. He's taller, and I feel like he can use that. He doesn't have to stay close.
Well, he's just picking up striking, though. There's a technical proficiency element to that's an issue. Like, just because you have the build to be able to hit someone before they can hit you, that doesn't mean very much if you're not technically proficient enough to make that happen. There's a huge gap. Back when I was, doing full contact Kyoshikine style fighting, where it was mostly like body shots. You don't hit to the face so much, but a lot of time you see taller guys, longer guys tend to have the advantage until they come up against somebody who gets past that range, and then they run out of answers real freaking quick, especially if the guy who gets past the range has a lot of power behind it. Then they're in a whole world of trouble because now it's endurance versus endurance. Yes, they could deliver that punch, but if there's a skill gap, which there is, Jan is heads and shoulders a better puncher than Aljamain Sterling. There's no question about that. He's the more technically proficient striker. He's the more powerful striker.
I agree.
So that's the thing. Aljamain Sterling can have the range, but I don't think he has the technique to use it yet. He's definitely got hands and feet to set up takedowns, which is what he needs to do. But again, those aren't going to be free. So it's a question of, can he capitalize and do what he needs to do on that? And, if I was young and I was looking at Aljamain Sterling and all the people he's beat, like Sanhagen, he choked him out on all that. That's cool. But you're fighting the person who shows up at the ring that night, not the person who's collected all of the heads consecutively before, right? Like when I used to do Kyokushin full contact stuff, you would literally, like, all the fighters would sit along the outside of the ring for the entire tournament. And so if you got into like the top 4, you watched the other 3 guys you're fighting against beat the crap out of everybody else. And in your mind, you're like, that's who I have to fight. But when you step into the fight, you don't think about like, oh man, he beat up like 6 guys before he got to me. And that looked really tough. You go, okay, so I've seen this guy fight a few times. I've kind of got a feel for what I was watching. And of course they're watching each other at this point. That's part of coaching, is you look at the strategies and you develop the, or you look at the tendencies, develop strategies, and teach your fighter to execute them. So I don't think Jan's going to be psyched out necessarily about who he's beaten. I don't even necessarily think it even matters all that much. Like, Aljamain Sterling could beat 100 people, but if he comes up against Jan with the wrong strategy, he's going to lose every time. So it comes down to, does he come with the right game plan, and can he pull it off? I think
that the fact that you feel like it's like a head and shoulders, like a favorable in Jan's favor, I don't think it is. I think it's more
in one
like
category when it comes to striking specifically.
Not
the
striking,
grappling, that's a whole different conversation.
I'm just saying in general, like win loss, like who's favored. There's a reason why they're 50-50 right here. Sure. And I think one big thing which we actually haven't mentioned is the fact that Aldo's defense isn't that great. He got rocked by Aldo early on in that fight, and then he had to come back from that to beat Aldo. Like, he doesn't have the defense that some of the other guys have. I feel like you don't have to have great striking to just rock a guy. If he can hit him the right way, he can get him going and then get that wrestling game going.
Well, I mean, you do and you don't. Because, I mean, if you're naturally powerful, that's one thing. Like, that was Big Country. Remember Big Country? That's the only reason he hung around for so long, is because he was a big dude and he could, like, swing. And
Just
sometimes they connected. Yeah, I mean, and when those punches did connect, they were effective.
He just had a skill draw, though.
There's a big difference between Aldo and Aljamain Sterling, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I still favor Sterling because of his wrestling. I don't think Jan's going to be able to defend it. I really don't think he will be. I think
are we allowed to bet sandwiches on these shows? Are we allowed to bet sandwiches?
I want foot-long subs. Foot-long subs.
Hey, if you want, I just don't see how.
Yes, the meatballs from Wawa are amazing, by the way. Not a plug, but listen.
I just had one today, so.
See. We'll talk. D-Bag. We'll talk later about this bet, because I got Jan.
Okay, but